Hey everyone, welcome back to AsArt with Nick and John. We post multiple times a week, so check out AsArt.space for the audio and video links. Today we're talking about Justice League, specifically visual effects. By the way, you guys, we're obviously getting into spoiler territory. We're coming in blind from this. We haven't watched any visual effects breakdowns or anything, or even comparisons. So we're kind of going educated guesses and just our overall thoughts, which, that's really the purpose, is telling the story. So just so you know that, if you haven't watched it yet, maybe hold off until you have.
Just in case, if you guys don't know, we did a breakdown of the visual effects for Wonder Woman to other main films. So subscribe to our channel if you guys like visual effects stuff, and comment down below. Let us know if you liked the visual effects, if you thought they improved it. Did it help spending more money? Did it help adding 4 hours? Let us know. We were so interested. Okay, so let's jump into it. The major thing, let's just jump into it right away. The character design of Steppenwolf.
What did you think of that?
I thought it looked better than the first one, but still, I'm not a fan of the design. Is that weird to say?
You thought it looked better in the first one?
No. I think it looks better than. I think it looks better than the first one, but I'm still not a fan of the design. I don't know what it is with super detailed stuff, and like it was like breathing and stuff. Like it reminded me of like Transformers, and the design just felt very muffled. It didn't feel very distinct.
I got very much of a Transformers vibe because you had all the little and the metallic clicking and things like that. Just in the armor, and he wasn't wearing that the whole movie, right? A lot of shots he was, obviously, but
it was really interesting.
The whole hammerhead look of him was a little bit weird to me. It reminded me of, what was it in which Harry Potter movie where they go swimming and the guy turns into a hammerhead or whatever.
Oh, he turns into a great white shark. Yes, that's
that's right. It's like
the Goblet of Fire. By the way, we did a VFX breakdown talking about that. So subscribe. We'll leave it in the description.
We didn't mean to plug that. That came up naturally. We swear. So, we're not like the epilogue of Justice League and trying to pitch 5 different movies. We're not trying to do that.
One thing that I found so interesting too was the design looked very similar to the designs from the Avengers Endgame. You have Thanos, right? Who's the big bad. And then you had like the ugly 4 creatures that didn't really stand out at all. Remind me a lot of the Steppenwolf character. Like very just bland, and like, even like the pale looks and like the muscle.
You mean the flying guys and stuff? Or like they remind me very much of Avengers.
I'm talking about Steppenwolf. Like his design remind me of like, how there's like the 4 bad guys. Yeah. It just reminded me of those, like very just like, like they kind of just did a design. Like it just like I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it.
They're not bad. It's just hard. It's really hard not to draw parallels between the Avengers and DC, because DC is obviously trying to do this same thing. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I guess, I don't know. They definitely took cues from other stuff, which is not a bad thing, but it was definitely a little bit.
Not a bad thing at all.
Steppenwolf, overall, I have to say, I would not have even known he was redesigned unless it's something that was featured in like the trailers and people breaking down online. I haven't seen this since it came out on Blu-ray initially. I saw Justice League. I'm like, what? I never need to see this again. Like, never am I going to want to see this again. Never do I need to see this again. And overall, before we even get into visual effects, I do have to say I did enjoy this version of the film more. I don't know if it's because
it was longer.
Disliked it so much the first time around. And that is worth pointing out. I tend to like long movies, like the Godfather movies, the Lord of the Rings extended stuff like that, Shawshank Redemption. Those are all very long movies. And so for me, maybe this fit more what I was looking for. Yeah. That being said, I even took a couple breaks during watching it, but I like that it was chapters, so you could do that. So, but as far as Steppenwolf, I wouldn't have necessarily noticed he was redesigned, but looking at the photos to remind me of what it was like before, and now I think I like this design now. Before, it was just like it just had a big helmet on, whereas this time around, it looked like it was conforming to his actual, facial structure and things like that, which I thought was, a little bit more of an alien design.
Yeah. And because of the time, we got to see more Flash with his powers, which we did not see that much of. And because of the time, they were able to expand more on his backstory and his power set. So one big difference in this movie for sure was in the first one, it felt like Superman was the most powerful character and he like saved the day. He came in at the end. Where this one, it actually kind of got the feeling like they needed everyone to be a part of this team to like defeat the bad guy. Like you had like the Flash running and messing with time, going back in time to push Cyborg in, and then he separates it. Like it was more of a team effort than the last one for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was a cool touch that like, hey, because up until Flash, had to kind of go back in time or whatever, faster than the speed of light, it did seem like Superman probably could have stopped everybody on his own. But Turned out, like, they all would have died except for, the Flash kind of did his thing at the last, like, and I remember the first time I saw Justice League, I didn't feel like I had any connection or understanding of Flash character. So this time around, them spending more time on that, I felt like did work a lot better for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And
do you think that's more Snyder adding things in, or just it's a longer cut so he could put in more of the original stuff he had?
yeah, it's just a longer cut. It helps this story, the longer cut. Like, I mean, we talked before, like how you were saying there was just some, they couldn't cram all the information in with the new characters in the last Justice League movie, the original one, the Whedon one. I was like, well, Guardians of the Galaxy did it, where you have like a cast of characters and you learn about their power sets or whatever.
So let's
and
just give them a little back. Let's give them a little bit of background. So Nick and I had talked before about how we were trying to figure out if Justice League could work in any cut, because you're introducing so many characters we don't have any other movies from or screen time with. But then Nick pointed out, you were saying that Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
So Guardians of the Galaxy, it works, right? You have a cast of 5 heroes. You learn about the characters, you find out who they are, and they succeed at defeating the bad guy. So it's totally possible to do a 5-character cast from scratch with no backstory in what, 2.5 hours or whatever the normal time is for a action.
Which I would have originally thought that, that's just not a good idea to have that many characters. But you're right, for Guardians of the Galaxy, it did work. Now, they were kind of together a vast majority of the time, whereas these guys were kind of off on their own.
Obviously, the story's a little different. They have to resurrect Superman and all that stuff, but it's totally doable. So, let's talk about the Flash. Are you a fan of the way they do the Flash's speed?
You know what? At the first time around when I saw it, I didn't really like it that much. I don't remember how many more scenes of him they've added in. It reminded me very much of, let's just, cut it to it. It reminded me very much of Quicksilver in X-Men, right? And it's very similar to that. But I like that stuff. I know a lot of people didn't like that super slow-mo where he's going around and ding, ding, touching stuff and things like that and just, tweaking things while he's running super fast. I always thought those were fun, at least for a first viewing. On repeated viewings, it starts to get a little bit old because you already know what's going to happen. But I thought it was pretty fun. Like his running motion looked a little bit weird. Like as far as his stride.
Yeah.
The way he moved his arms. Yeah.
Yeah, and that could have been the actor's choice to run that way. I mean, because obviously it's however they're doing it. If it's on wires or on a treadmill and they're slowing it down and stuff, and he's trying to make it look more like he's finessing through the space and time or the Speed Force, which is the power source where he gets his powers and stuff. But overall, I liked it. Like I wasn't like, oh, this isn't whatever. I'm like, oh, this works. But one thing for sure, these heroes seem more godlike power-wise than the Avengers. Just the way they jump and the way they get hit and bashed around and they're perfectly fine, like constantly, you can tell they're at another like god level of heroes. And I don't know if I'm 100% a fan of them being that strong, but hey, that's the DC universe, right?
You mean as far as them just getting right up from everything? Or?
Well, I'm just saying like Aquaman, how he can jump super high and do all that stuff. And like, not trying to judge the two or say one's better than the others, but like, I felt like Avengers was more grounded in realism. And this is more like fantasies or sci-fi when it comes to the power level of these characters.
Which is funny because I think that's the exact opposite of what DC's going for with these. This is more realistic and more gritty, and then you're saying it's more fantasy-like.
With their powers.
Yeah, with their powers. Yeah,
for sure.
You know what? I mean, Nick and I both talked about this. Is one of the cheesy scenes in the movie is when there's the choir singing as Aquaman's going back in the water. That was early on in the movie. I was like, I don't know if I can take 4 hours of this. This is what it's going to be like. I'm like, I might have to check out. But you know what? It did get across that idea of these are God. I mean, that's a god for that area, or and one of them is considered like a god. And they talked about Zeus and and all that stuff. It's like, well, those were technically gods, and so these are descendants of gods in some cases, or the Amazons and things. So,
which is totally fine. Totally fine for
God-like works, but it definitely does take away from their vulnerabilities a little bit as far as suspense. I mean, never once did I think they're actually going to die. One, we know that they need to have a bunch of movies after this to kind of recap all the money they've been spending on this universe. But two, it's like, all right, I don't know. I guess you're never worried that in Avengers they're gonna die either, even though some did, I guess. In
It's
the
not
actual
it's not
game.
that they're gonna die, but like you literally had Hawkeye, who's just a guy with a bow and arrow. You know?
That's true. Yeah, yeah. Batman's kind of along those lines, but
Oh,
even
he
he
totally
got beat
was.
up really bad,
He was
but he
just
still
shooting
just
around.
got back. Yeah, but he didn't seem like he was ever going to be
No,
mortally death hurt.
the Flash is the one who was limping the most.
Mhm. Which I mean, I liked the Flash's character before. I thought he was just kind of cheesy throwing
Mm.
in just because they wanted another character to make a movie off of. But this time
He was
around,
like the Michelangelo of the group.
yes, he was very much. But I actually enjoyed him. I think because we got more of his backstory this
Uh-huh.
time.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious. So I don't want to jump around too much, but what did you think of Cyborg? Is that his name,
Yeah,
or just
I was
that's
going to
what-
ask you. I'll go for it,
Yeah,
John. What did you think?
I didn't love his effects the first time around, and
Mm.
I still don't think I loved his effects this time around either. I think his face looks so perfectly clean, and then
Mm.
he has the whitest bleached teeth I've ever seen, and that just doesn't make him feel like a
Mm.
gritty robot to me.
You
But
would think it
most of
would
the
be more like scars along the line of
yeah,
the.
and
Mm.
most of the main actors and actresses did have super bleached white teeth. That's just the actors and actresses. You can't get around that. But it made
Mhm.
them feel a little bit artificial to me, which is I know a weird nitpick, but when everybody has perfectly white teeth, it's like okay.
Yeah.
But his effects I thought worked well
Mhm.
for the context, but I think he looked a little bit too clean. I don't know.
Mm.
What did you think? I'm curious to see what you were thinking
Yeah,
about it.
my whole thing was like I was totally fine with the metal and like the way it all worked together and the way his arm transformed, but I just didn't
Mhm.
like the connection, the way it connected to his
Yeah.
body. I wanted
Mm.
more of like it's indented into his body, and obviously
Oh,
like we
similar
don't.
things then. Okay.
Yeah, because
You were thinking similar things.
just to ground it a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like even like in Avengers when they do the snap, but like you almost see the armor like get embedded to the character after they use
Mhm,
it. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Or just like you can
Yeah.
tell like just by the power from whatever it is, it's like eating away. Like if this thing is that strong, it would almost be eating
Mhm.
away at him slowly, maybe or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that. You
yeah.
know, where just an opinion, but I mean it looked good. I'm very happy, really happy with his story this time around because I feel like we got more of a backstory, more of a connection between him and his dad, where we really didn't have that at all in the last one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was my concern going in is I didn't have any connection to the Flash or Cyborg. We didn't have standalone movies for them. We didn't for
Yeah.
Aquaman at the time either. So I guess a
Yeah.
lot for
There
the
was a
first time around felt
great
like
joke where I think Flash asks Cyborg, he's like, "Hey, what do you think? You think Wonder Woman likes older guys or whatever, or something like that?" And he's
yeah.
like, "She's like, dude, no, she's fine with any age because she's like super old. She's like Zeus's
She's
age."
5,000 years old. She's older than any guy. I thought
Yeah,
that was pretty funny. Yeah.
yeah. And I really like the Batman like gear stuff. I was a fan
Mhm.
of like the car. I was a fan of
Mhm.
the plane. I was a fan of the spider crawler. Even though it was the same thing we saw before, I'm still a fan of it. I didn't see a difference at all with the VFX of it, but it
Mhm.
was cool. I mean, yeah, it
Well,
was
it
pretty
was
cool.
nice that they went by very fast, which is good and bad. You didn't get to really enjoy them that much, but at the same time, it's like, well, they're machines going
Yeah.
against almost godlike creatures. They wouldn't last that long. So,
And then this one felt more bloodier. Like
than the
more
Whedon.
like yeah, I don't remember seeing blood like I did here. Like,
Oh,
just
interesting.
like when he got lasered and stuff, I like every time they would stab a monster, you would see like blood gushing and stuff like that. So I was like,
Mhm.
oh, it's pretty bloody, which
I
is
didn't think
good.
it
I
was
like
gratuitously.
no, but
I didn't
like
think it was overly
you
bloody
know, I
though.
feel like you don't see blood in like the Marvel movies.
Oh no. Well, yeah. I mean, they're going for kind of a different. I mean, at least DC is saying they're trying to push for more, not realistic, but more realism
Darker.
or grittiness. So it makes sense that they would have that. And
Mhm.
definitely, the palette was a lot of scenes was a lot more washed out. Aside from like heavy action scenes with explosions and stuff, it was usually a pretty subdued palette. Whereas Infinity War and Endgame, you had some pretty saturated colors in
Yeah.
certain spots for sure.
What did you think of the aspect ratio?
That threw me off a lot. I mean, if this was, say, we had COVID times in the early mid 90s before 69 screens were normal, and
Hmm.
say just magically the internet was good enough, back then I would have felt like, okay, the majority of people watching home are to be watching on 4:3 screens. Let's go ahead and, deliver it in that aspect ratio because, otherwise everybody's going to be watching the letterbox versions and people don't like that. But in an era where I would say a lot of people have 16:9 screens. I thought that was a very odd choice. It definitely, especially since everything was finished in 16:9 originally, for the Whedon
And they
cut.
cropped it.
Yeah, they cropped it, so you're losing a lot of the cool imagery and just gives you a more cinematic feel. But I have to say, after I watched it for the first two hours or whatever, I didn't think about it as much. But I think I did miss seeing the rest of that wide imagery. What about you? Did it bother you at all? Or
No, I thought it works better now on mobile devices and streaming stuff. I don't know.
Nick,
it works.
Nick was
it
on
works
a
for me.
plane and watching it on the plane, so it was so it worked well for your mobile device.
Yes, HBO Max. You can download movies apparently onto iPads and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
so
really
it totally
cool.
works out.
Yeah, so that was cool. You could do that.
I do have to say, great job to the VFX artists. The everything looked good. Like, I mean, obviously they threw money at this for sure, and they threw money at it the first time, and they really cleaned it up. I feel like but there's still some things that feel off, but it's always going to feel off because it's a superhero movie. We just did a WandaVision breakdown. We talked about how there's just some things that are just always going to feel kind of awkward, right? Like flying for me. I don't know what it is with Superman flying. I still can't get over like the flying with Superman and how he. I don't know what it is. But let's talk about Martian Manhunter. Did you like that?
Oh, one thing that we had done a breakdown visual effects for Wonder Woman 1984, and I think Nick and I, one of the biggest things that really pulled us out of it is the gravity felt really off when she was jumping up and landing down. And
yeah.
I didn't feel like that took me out of it as much this time. Was there not as much of that, or do you think they did it more integrated? Or
it just works. Everyone's so overpowered, which is fine. Like that's just the story. Like they're jumping from extreme heights. They're getting hit, and they're like perfectly fine. No bruises or no cuts or anything. The only person getting beat up is the Flash. Poor guy. But like Wonder Woman never ever had one bruise, and she got headbutted like through the ground. And she fought Steppenwolf. She got smashed against the wall a couple times. So Batman. One thing I miss with Batman, like Christian Bale, it was so cool to see his bruises constantly. Whenever like he was always so beat up. You know what I mean? And obviously,
by the third movie, he was practically a cripple, right?
I remember now. Maybe in the Josh Whedon's cut, I think I remember seeing a beat up Bruce. I think maybe he was putting a shirt on or something. Like he was like oh, and I think I don't know, don't quote me, but I think Wonder Woman was like maybe you should stay behind or something like that. He's like, no, I'm going or whatever. Right? I think because they changed that whole sequence. Superman, remember originally he grabs Batman and he's like, do you bleed? And he's like closed up on him, and then like Lois comes out, and then he's like, oh,
did he?
Yeah, in the first cut, like I think he
the first cut.
And I think that's when they had to replace it because that was like a pickup shot. And this one, he was just lasering him with like the absorption pad things, but like So, but anyways, that's just a difference. But we're not doing a difference. We're talking about visual effects. So,
but as far as the flying, Superman flying doesn't bother as much. I think it's because you see at least the rippling of the cape. It makes it feel like there's
times that when he just floats. Something. I think I'm complaining about like after he got resurrected. That's what I'm complaining about. At least like
when he doesn't have his outfit on.
Yeah, that's what I'm complaining about. But I mean, it's fine. Yeah. It works. It totally works.
But did the gravity stuff bother you as much?
No,
did you notice it? I didn't really feel
No.
like it was the weird running aside from the Flash, which might have been a creative choice. I didn't really notice any.
Everyone's so fast in this movie. I don't remember Wonder Woman being fast enough to stop multiple bullets. Wonder Woman remember there's that whole sequence, but like fast enough to like you. That's like that's like
Flash.
I know. I feel like everyone has like fast speed in this universe, like which takes away from the Flash, where they're like, you know what, the Flash is so fast he can reverse time, but it's like let Flash's thing be the speed. And but like when Wonder Woman can move that quick, she moves fast, dude. And it's just like and you get Superman moves fast because he's like Superman, right? He has like everyone's power,
you know what? They definitely. I felt like the powers went into outside of their range a number of times. Like you said, like the crazy jumping for Aquaman. Would Aquaman have crazy jumping? I don't know. You're working out those muscles underwater. I don't know, but you know what I mean. It was a little bit hard for me to. But obviously, it doesn't matter. It's a fun superhero film. But at the same time, just looking at it from using the visual effects for a story perspective, like, okay, well, that's not quite as unique to those characters as you would think. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was fine,
But
obviously. But
you know what's funny? We would have never seen this movie because they would have made him cut it down. I doubt if they would have allowed a 4-hour movie into theaters because
no,
what that's like two showings a day for one theater. You know what I mean? Like because it's like 4
oh,
hours
that's
plus
true.
cleaning.
Yeah,
Like that's like an 8 hour. That's like you're not getting any money off your theaters at that point.
that's true.
I don't know if it
Yeah,
would have
yeah,
worked in theaters. I mean, I think they would have cut it and we still would have had a bad story. And the only reason why it worked was because it was 4 hours to establish, but a lot of it could have been cut out. There was a lot of slow motion, which takes up time. There was like random stuff with the choir singing. And I get the Flash when he was like saving Iris and he like spent 20 minutes like staring into her eyes and then he like grabbed a hot dog. It's like, what's that? Like, even though I love that he moves so fast, his shoes ripped. I like that. Like,
yeah.
I like that detail though a lot. But
Yeah.
like, there were just some things like you obviously, but you know, I think of this as the Lord of the Rings extended edition kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like the director's cut. Like this is the 5-hour movie. You meant to have all the little Easter eggs and little things in there and stuff like that. So I mean, I'm happy the studio allowed this. I'm happy we were able to see visual effects and his vision originally, even though he may have tweaked some things after seeing reviews from Josh Williamson. He's like, you know what, let's do this and this.
Yeah, you know, in the early on parts of the movie, it did feel like there was way more slow motion. Like that whole thing of Superman dying at the beginning. They explained it later on, like, okay, it was his voice and him dying that woke up these cubes or whatever. But at the same time, I was like, gosh, that dragged on a lot. And then the first time you saw the Flash, you know, rescuing the girl from the crash, that went on for a long time. So I didn't read much about this, you know, Snyder cut, but I did read that the slow motion just went on and on. And it did early on, but then it didn't do that as much, or at least it didn't do it as frequently later on to where it bothered me. But early on, I was like, oh no, this is gonna feel like it's forever. But you know what? For Flash's character, I think the slow motion is completely warranted. The beginning, even though I didn't understand at the time, they were establishing the importance of Superman dying for the rest of the story. And if they didn't explain that, that would have been a big deal. Like that would have been not necessary, but the way they explain, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, there was a lot of
What
slow
do you
motion.
think of Darkseid? He was the big bad with he's like the Thanos of the.
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna say. He has this big jaw, just like Thanos. I'm like,
I think it might have been the same comic book designer that actually designed him. Yeah, I think he jumped between the two. Yeah.
okay, because I was like, okay, they have the cubes, which are like the tesseracts, you know, like they have to find. I was like,
But comic books rip off each other all the time. Now.
Yes, for sure.
Marvel's ripped off DC, and DC has ripped off Marvel.
I'm sure.
Throughout history.
Yeah. But you know what? I thought his design was fine. I mean, obviously, you know, I don't know the comics, so I don't know what he looked like in the comics.
It worked.
He looked drastically
I think it
different.
worked. You know what throws me off? Like the same thing that threw me off with Martian Manhunter, red eyes. I don't know if I'm a fan of glowing red eyes. Maybe it's just because you don't see it too often on people, but it just like I don't know if it. I don't know. Like maybe if I see it more, I'll get used to it. But it's just kind of weird to see glowing red eyes. You know what I mean? I'm almost kind of happy they didn't give red eyes to Voldemort now. Harry Potter.
Because in the book he had red eyes, right?
Yeah. By the way, we did Harry Potter VFX breakdowns anyway.
That's a lot of them. I mean, I'm sure that if we saw him throughout a movie, just like the 4:3 aspect ratio, which still bothers me, but after I watched the movie long enough, I didn't think about it anymore. If we saw red eyes for a lot, after a while, we would probably wouldn't think
But then
about
again, his powers though, he has omega beams. So like they
so it makes sense.
But they're known for like they'll go and switch directions.
Oh,
It's actually a pretty cool thing in like the comic books and cartoons, and I was hoping to see that in this movie, and I didn't get a chance, but it's fine. I wanted to talk about the dream sequences and the flashbacks sequences.
Yeah,
it was really
those are
cool.
my favorite sequences.
Yeah, it was really cool. I really like lore stuff. I wish we had more of that, and I'm super happy that they were almost going with a dark timeline for Justice League. Yeah, it's like I think it's in Injustice. I think that's the storyline in the comic books. Where, spoiler alert, just in case you haven't read the comic books and stuff like that, I'm going to talk about comic book stuff. The Joker gives Superman the Joker serum or something like that. And something happens where he ends up killing Lois Lane, and that's when you get the dark timeline. And I think they're setting it
wow.
up for that because the flashback was, Lois Lane is the key kind of thing, to like make sure
Yeah.
Superman stays in line kind of thing. So in that dark timeline, the one we saw at the end, Lois Lane is dead at that time. That's when
Oh,
we got the Jared
Jared
Leto,
Leto. Jared Leto.
Joker, which kind of worked. I wasn't like angry at all about his Joker. I'm like, oh, this kind of works. You know what I mean? Long hair. It looks like he got like red paint around his mouth or whatever, but it works.
Yeah, you know what? I was completely like the first flashback sequence when was it Cyborg's plugged into the cube or whatever. You get like a look at what you see Wonder Woman with the coins on her eyes, like Charon, taking her to the afterlife, and you're seeing everybody enslaved and even Superman kind of on his knees and stuff. Like I thought that stuff's cool. I didn't understand it in the context of the movie, but I was like, all right, this is I felt like they were looking at Galadriel's water thing, like this things that have not come to pass, but may come to be. That's what I totally thought of. But
Lord
at the
of the
end,
Rings.
I was completely lost. I'm like, all right, this is an epilogue. Why are they jumping to this weird thing? So that was really weird to me. I like that stuff though.
Okay. Let's end with your favorite VFX shot of the whole movie. Do you want me to?
Well, there was a lot.
You have to pick one, and do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go for. I'm gonna have to think about this.
I like the last one when the Flash goes back in time because you see Superman's body get rebuilt. I think that was one of the coolest shots. I was like,
yeah,
no, that's pretty sick. I was really digging that shot a lot. Like even the whole sequence. Like if they would have used slow motion maybe in the right way, that sequence could have had a bigger impact maybe with the running slow. You know what I mean? Like if they only did so much, but then he finally charged up to do his slow motion, like like really slow motion stuff, that would have maybe gave that moment some more time. But we know Zack Snyder loves his slow mo. We know from 300, like every movie you ever watch, we love, he loves the slow mo, which looks good. I mean, anything in slow motion looks good. Even the football hits.
Oh yeah, that stuff looks great. You just get so much more detail. Yeah. You know what? I have to think about trying to figure out a favorite visual effects shot, but I did like that because it's a reminder. Like, hey, even Superman is not going to survive this thing. So this is really Flash is the only solution here is that he had to do that. Now at that point, they made a big deal of his suit being able to stop the intense heat, and he had to rip at his suit. So I'm like, all right, is he going to melt or what's going to happen to it? So like that kind of.
Come on.
There was a lot of weird. When Wonder Woman, she jumps down near the beginning into this deep cave and she goes to this secret spot where she looks at like the old cave paintings or whatever. She jumped down this huge thing in heels and her heels didn't break when she hit the ground. I'm like, all right, so.
Yeah. And like no one's discovered this yet either too, apparently.
Yeah. No one's discovered it. Her heels, like, are they Wonder Woman heels? They look like just regular heels. Like you would think she would take those. So things like that. No one is ever even sweating in this. Like they're never dirty on their faces.
Sweating or bruises or anything like that.
That's the stuff that threw me out more than anything. It's like, all right, show them that they're in a conflict. Not that they don't have to be getting hurt and stuff, but at least show that they're exerting themselves.
Even the Avengers get dirty. Like Iron Man gets all beat up and bloody. The whole everyone, Thor, Captain America, like they're bruised up and dirty, and no one got dirty. And this whole fight, and there's not even a splash of blood. The Flash. Yeah.
But no one else, and I get the idea that maybe they regenerate quicker and heal quicker, but right after they're getting hit, they're not really bleeding or hurt. I mean, again, just even if it's not injury, just dirt and stuff, just show me that they're perspiring or something like that. That threw me out a lot, to be honest, because it just, the bummer part when you do that stuff is you have to make sure you match it from shot to shot, day to day, month to month when you shoot these shots out of sequence. But at the same time, it goes a long way in selling that they're really having to work for this. Because when I looked at them, they're not even sweating. I'm like, well, they're not even trying hard. So to me, that threw me out of it a lot. Cool. So that's not necessarily a visual effect, but visual effects, special effects, makeup is definitely a special effect. And that seemed like a huge oversight in that. So that threw me off a lot. And let me ask, I think, Nick, we talked just a little bit before this. The scenes where Superman had his funky lip in the first version of Justice League, did they go back and reshoot those shots? Did they fix the visual effects, or what was the deal with those?
So
because that threw me out a lot.
All the shots with the mustache, Josh Whedon called them back to reshoot those shots. So Zack Snyder didn't use any of Josh Whedon's shots, his reused shot, or his shots that he did afterwards, whatever the right terminology is for that.
So this is what he shot originally, or he went back and shot these scenes the way he wanted them?
I think he used a lot of what he shot originally, and he might have did some extra stuff on top of that.
Because I mean, I think they spent like something like $70 million to remaster this and fix the effects work that he wanted to have different stuff like that. But I don't know how much of that is pickup shoots, just effects budget. You know, obviously you don't have to market as much because you're not trying to get people to theaters right now. So that's a little bit easier, especially when you're releasing on HBO Max. But I'm curious where that money, how is distributed, because I'm sure there was some pickup shoots and stuff that he wanted that they didn't have. But since those, I didn't know about the Mission Impossible mustache stuff with Henry Cavill. So I didn't know that something was going on with his lip. And so when I watched this on Blu-ray, when the first version of Justice League came out, I'm like, what the heck is going on with it? I had to pause it in the middle. I'm like, what is up with Superman's lip? And then I had to find, I'm like, okay, it's because he had a mustache and they were rushing it probably. But I was looking and I'm like, all right, either they did a really good job fixing the effects work, if they did pickup shoots, or this was footage that didn't need that work on it. But it was interesting. Yeah. Do you feel like a 4-hour runtime is completely justified? I'll give my answer in a second, but I want to see if you think it was justified, needed. Like, what do you think it should have been if it shouldn't have been 4 hours?
No, 4 hours is fine. If this is the vision he had, and we're in the modern age of streaming now where people can sit at home and watch it. It's like, I mean, I never, the extended editions of Lord of the Rings was never in theaters. That's something you watched at home and stuff anyway. So I'm 100% fine. I'm happy. I know he had a lot of family stuff going on and he, couldn't finish the project and all, whatever. Maybe the studio got mad. Who knows what the drama is behind it. I'm just glad the internet came through and he came through, and hopefully the internet will come through and we can see his next vision. Because this wasn't bad, and I wouldn't mind another 4-hour Justice League movie. I wouldn't be mad.
That's what I was going to say. You know what? Would I be in line at theaters to watch this? No. But after I got past that very beginning, kind of slower paced choir singing stuff, did I enjoy the movie after that? I really did.
There's only one shot, and every movie has weird shots.
No, yeah. But I mean, the pace felt a lot more even after the first quarter of the movie, or maybe even 15% or so. I thought you needed 4 hours to kind of, especially if you consider this was released before you had Aquaman by himself, before you had some of these other movies that kind of filled in the gaps for these characters. This was your first introduction to them. And really in that initial cut, you didn't really get that much of them. So I felt like 4 hours was completely justified because I didn't feel like anybody's storyline got too much time. Like Cyborg, he didn't get too much screen time. His story arc was perfectly in there. Wonder Woman, we already knew about her storyline, so I think that was fine by that point. Flash, we needed that, to be connected to the character at all. So I feel like the 4-hour runtime was completely justified. If this was his original vision, his vision was ahead of the times, because before COVID and before streaming on HBO Max, this would have not been doable. And this reminds me of the old movies like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments, where they have a set intermission halfway through the movie. You go out and use the restroom as a mass audience. You go get your food and come back and sit down and they restart it after like 15 minutes, a half an hour. That's what this felt like. If they didn't have chapters, what was it, 5 or 6 chapters, including the epilogue, I don't think this would have worked, because even sitting at home, I wouldn't have known what was a good stopping point. But with them in chapters, like, hey, we gave you 6 opportunities. Whenever you feel like, go ahead and pause it, get up and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
If it wasn't COVID era, streaming at home on HBO Max and having chapters, I don't think this would have worked. But in this context, I think it worked great. And yeah, I would be interested in seeing more long movies like this. Again, I'm a person who really enjoys long movies, so I'm probably part of the minority in that. And but yeah, I thought it worked out. I thought it was fun. I thought it was cool. Just 4:3 aspect ratio. Not a fan of that. We didn't talk about the score. That's not really visual effects related, but I just want to ask that it does add. Did you like the score more the first time or the second time?
First time was Danny Elfman, I think.
Yeah, which I'm a fan of. I like Danny Elfman a lot.
Honestly,
I don't
can't remember anything from the music.
Yeah, I don't remember either, which is fine.
I can't remember music from a lot of new action movies now. It's not as iconic as what we know as iconic music, but that's the discussion for another time. Guys, subscribe. We're going to be doing a deep dive on the story, and we'll probably bring in some friends on it too, and we're going to just rip it apart or praise it. Well, I won't tell you now, but there'll probably be a variety of different answers there.
All right, everyone. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you thought about the visual effects in general, the change visual effects, anything at all. We'll have other videos covering different topics of this. I think it's clear to say we really enjoyed this and we're curious to see what you thought as well. So thank you very much for watching. We'll see you on the next AsArt.